Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to take place in the second chapter in the book of Proverbs. And the first 9 chapters of Proverbs are not exactly narrative. Now, the majority of the Old Testament is arranged in a narrative format and it has all the characteristics that entails, namely plot sequence and character development. The book of Proverbs is a little different. Now, what comes after the 9th chapter are mostly arranged very often, perhaps more often than not. The verse bears no thematic connection to its predecessor or successor, but in the first 9, we do witness a more linear trajectory of it. And the theme of the second chapter is the benefits of wisdom. Now, Proverbs itself belongs to the category of wisdom literature. Wisdom is will prepare you and will make you anticipate certain situations, what to say, how to act, and it will also guide you through problem solves. Now, no amount of wisdom is going to protect you from all problems, but when those problems do arise, as they inevitably will, it will give you the guidance to emerge from them without being scarred and increased in wisdom. So even the negative experiences in life contribute to our wisdom to, I think, whether through affliction and adversity, whether sought or unsought, I've learned most of everything in life that I have learned about myself, my God, and just about everything else through the path of affliction, which we should embrace and learn from and experience. So the opening verse reads, "My son, if you accept my words and treasure up my commands with you, so that you make your ear attend to wisdom, incline your heart to understanding." So this is addressed to his son. This is a loving father's parental guidance to a son he wants to succeed and groom for the throne. Now, just because everything in Scripture is not written to us does not mean it is written for us. So may we better benefit from this than Rehoboam, Solomon's unworthy successor. We need to accept the words and treasure up the commands. That means value and esteem them. And this will make we have to have an ear which gravitates to wisdom. We have to have an appetite for the things which make us wise, wise sayings, wise wisdom literature, and understanding lays at the foundation of wisdom, but wisdom is the exponential expansion of understanding. If understanding is the ability to find out the puzzle pieces, wisdom, or to dissect the puzzle pieces, wisdom is the ability to tie them all together. "For if you cry out for discernment, lift up your voice for understanding. If you seek her as silver and search for her as hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of Yahweh and find the knowledge of Elohim." So we have to pray for wisdom, and discernment is the ability to detect that which is spiritually harmful from that which is spiritually beneficial. So discernment is a key trait we have to develop in the course of our Christian walk. And we have to lift up our voice. Now, the prayer for wisdom will not go unaccommodated. We read in James 1, "If any of you lack wisdom, ask, and Yahweh will, or Elohim will give it to you liberally, and upbraideth not." He will not deny a request for wisdom, because this is commensurate with his will. He wants us to grow and increase in wisdom and knowledge and understanding. And we have to treasure her as we would silver. Now, earthly treasure cannot compare, and the treasures of wisdom cannot be monetarily equated or likened to any treasure on earth. It is an imperishable treasure, now we can't take anything with us beyond the grave, any item of creation, any earthly treasure, but we can take the wisdom we have stored, part of our eternal progression into more perfect creatures, and search the hidden treasures. Now, wisdom's not immediately obvious. This demands diligence, discipline, and dedication. Now, in our age of microwaves and instant communication, we largely lack as a society and a culture the virtue of patience through which wisdom may be acquired. Wisdom is not going to become immediately evident. It comes through a process of trial and error, pain and learning. And fear of Yahweh. Now, in the 7th verse of the preceding chapter, Solomon says, "The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge," for the first and certainly not the last time through throughout this book. So wisdom originates in the one who is omniscient, that is the attribute of unlimited or infinite intelligence, and wisdom is, of course, beyond intelligence. Now, many scientifically minded men are intelligent, but a lot of scientifically minded people struggle to accept theological truths. That does not prevent them from venturing into the territory which their scientific method is incompetent. Now, not all scientists are atheists, but a lot of them are. But the fear of Yahweh and the knowledge of Elohim, that is knowledge of himself, this is to be truly wise, one must know the source, the personification of all wisdom, which is Elohim. For Yahweh gives wisdom, out of his mouth, knowledge and understanding. So Yahweh is the one who can give us wisdom. He's the one who created us with our cognitive capacities and our spiritual antennas. Spirituality is unique to human beings, so there are three elements in life: the body, the soul, and the spirit. Plants have they have physical bodies, which is the ability to respond to external stimuli. Animals have soul. This is an awareness of other creatures around them, and the spirit is what humanity is uniquely endowed. This enables us to understand, contemplate, and have fellowship with the divine. So if we want wisdom, we have to seek it from the source, and apart from him, no wisdom can be granted. And out of his mouth, he speaks to us in his voice through his prophets. Now we speak to him in prayer. He speaks to us in this book. And prayer, he speaks to me in prayer. I pray and meditate. My prayer leads into meditation. And I've never heard a tangible voice of divinity, but he does speak to me through the gentle promptings of the whisper, the gentle whisper of the Spirit, and convictions of prompting, so that I know he is, and that he does speak to me and guide me and preserves me and keeps me and leads me to more abundant waters and green pasture lands through which wisdom may be extracted. And he treasures up stability for the straight, a shield for those who walk blamelessly. So the treasure of wisdom belongs to him. These are the riches of spiritual and intellectual truths, and the treasure is beyond measure, at least compared to the items of the earth, which cannot. Now the riches of wisdom cannot be quantifiably measured or assessed in any way like that, but it is beyond quantification. It is a quality. And the stability for the straight, the stability will give us balance and the ability to walk without veering or deviating from the straight and narrow, and a shield for those who walking blamelessly. Now he will preserve us, protect us, guide us, and keep us on the condition that we walk blamelessly. We are to not sin or give even occasion, do no evil, lest no evil can be spoken of us. Of course, the world will always smear and slander us Christians, but we should not give them the license or the legitimate license to do so. We should endeavor to be as blameless as we are. That means, now none of us are strictly speaking blameless, but it is nevertheless a virtue and a quality to be cultivated. To watch over the paths of justice, and the way of his kind ones he guards. So the path of justice, it would have been essential for a royal ruler. And remember, this is addressed to his son, who he is grooming to inherit the throne. So justice is a measure of wisdom. To rule in justice is an expression of wisdom. Injustice is from lack of wisdom. But the kind ones, those are ones who are reciprocally kind to him, because he is kind to all. He is kind to us, and he will guard us, protect us, serve us, and keep us if we are kind to him and to his creatures in as much as he is. Then you would understand righteousness and judgment and straightness, every good path. So these three items, righteousness, justice, and straightness, are elements of wisdom. Understanding, remember, is the foundation of wisdom. Wisdom is the exponential expansion of it, as I earlier mentioned. Righteousness is not only the doing of the right thing, but with the right motive and for the right reason and the right way. And straightness is, as we already covered, the ability to remain on the straight and narrow without deviating or veering off course. And every good path, now the best path is the straight and narrow path, which leads to salvation. It has been paved for us, and we have the recipe and ingredients and resources to follow the one who paved the path for us, that being Yahshua Messiah for us new covenant believers. For wisdom would enter your heart, and knowledge be pleasant to your soul. So wisdom is a source of delight to the wise. Wisdom. Now Solomon. This is perhaps an overgeneralization, because in Ecclesiastes 1:18, what does he say? That he who increases in wisdom grows in grief. So the more wise we become, the more aware we become of imperfections around us that we are at the mercy of. We can. There are forces in nature beyond our power to comprehend, let alone control. But in general, wisdom will be a source of delight and pleasure and satisfaction for the wise. That does not mean it is all roses, but it will be pleasant to our soul. We will delight in it and bask in it, and will be ultimately a source of happiness. That does not mean that we will not encounter grief on the path. And remember, it's through adversity and affliction that I personally have learned most everything I know about my life, myself, and my God. Discretion would guard you. Understanding would watch over you. So the guarding and watching over, these are two simultaneously duties of protection. So discretion is the ability, it's like discernment, but it's also, to be discreet. Wisdom does not advertise itself. It is not self-aggrandizing. It is content to be what it is without making itself known. Whereas foolishness, by its very nature, is self-advertising, self-aggrandizement, and has the annoying habit of wanting to make. The fool has an annoying habit of proclaiming his foolishness. What is Proverbs 12:23 says, the prudent man concealeth knowledge, but the heart of fools proclaimeth foolishness. But understanding, that is the foundation, the lower tier of wisdom, which will watch over us and guide us and protect us from harm. So without understanding, we cannot understand that which is harmful and that which is injurious. So we have to have understanding in order to be secure in our walk in life. To deliver you from the evil ways, from the man who speaks perversities. Now, language is a clear reflection of wisdom. Those who are wise speak words that are constructive, those which uplift and build and edify, whereas those who are perverse minds and perverse hearts, they speak profanely. They lack the character and the intelligence to otherwise express themselves without profanity or perversity, and to deliver from the evil way. Now, the evil way, there is no singular evil way. There is a way which seems right to a man, but the end thereof is death. We read of in Proverbs 14:12 and also 16:25. And we do want deliverance from the evil way, which leads to hell, death, and destruction, and the second death, the eternal death. Those who leave the paths of straightness, to walk the ways of darkness, who rejoice to do evil, they delight in the perversities of evil, whose paths are crooked, and they are perverted in their ways. So it is possible to depart from the truth, and the consequences of knowing the truth. You're better off knowing the truth, not knowing the truth, than forsaking it and abandoning it. This is the premise of the passage in the New Testament, such as 2 Peter 2:20-21 and Hebrews 10:26. But, it is possible to have wisdom and then forsake it. Remember, wisdom is not an instant thing. It demands a lifetime of discipline, diligence, and persistent practice to attain that which we seek, that which we can benefit from, that which will make a meaningful impact in our lives and those around us. And rejoicing to do evil. Now, evil does seem like pleasure. The path of immediate gratification is evil, because the natural man prioritizes and considers its own interest, wants, needs, and desires as preeminent, and they will rejoice at that. And to delight in the perversities of evil shows a lack of character or culture. So what we delight in, what we take pleasure in, reveals a lot about our cultural and education. So the natural man naturally delights in perversity and evil and all the rest. And their paths are crooked. That means they are not following the straight narrow path to salvation, but the crooked path, which is the broad path to death, damnation, and destruction. And they are perverted in all their ways. That means every single way. So perverted, they are not perverted in a single element. Now, he who is perverted in one way will, in all likelihood, be defined by perversion. And perversion is not limited to sexual sin alone, although that's what comes up next when we receive the rewarning of the adulteress, likened to a strange woman. To deliver you from the strange woman, from the foreigner who flatters with her words. Now, Solomon devotes the 5th and 7th chapter to the dangers of the strange woman, that is an adulteress who is a seductress, and flatterers are adept in the art of adulteresses and adulterers are adept in the communication of flattery, but flattery is not communication, it is manipulation. So even though it seems good and what they have to offer will give you immediate gratification, flattering with the words will ultimately mislead, deceive, and manipulate. So it's seldom for our benefit to indulge in what seems so gratifying, at least in the immediate sense. Who forsakes the companion of her youth, and has forgotten the covenant of her Elohim. So part of the covenant was the one of the righteous commandments of the Decalogue was to abstain from adultery. Adultery is not the only species of sexual sin. Adultery is the engaging in illicit sexual relations with at least one person who is married. Anything else outside of marriage is fornication, and of course there's homosexuality. That is also a sexual sin, but the one he's addressing here is a forsaking and a forgetting of the covenant. Now, marriage is also a covenant between two people, which is to guide and govern their relationship. It demands faithfulness, and the covenant of Israel, the Jewish people were married to Yahweh, and as such they were not to go flirting or indulging in adulterous relationship with the other deities that were literally all around them. Sadly, Solomon met his premature demise because of he had 300 concubines and 700 wives who he invited to set up shop with their idolatrous edifices in Jerusalem. In the 11th chapter of Kings, he has an otherwise upright and virtually perfect life until that point, but even he fell. For her house has sunk down to death, and her paths to the death. None going into her returns, nor do they reach the path of life. So even though illicit or forbidden sexual relationships or indulgences may seem to add pleasure to life and benefit and improve one's life, at least temporarily, the end thereof is death. So that is a spiritual death. Sin results in spiritual death. The wages of sin is death, Romans 6:23. So anyone who indulges in illicit, adulterous woman is not going to return from the straight and narrow. Of course, every sin can be repented of, and one should not be defined or controlled or limited by their past indulgences. Adultery is a sin, but it's not necessarily more grievous than any other. So walk in the way of goodness and keep the paths of righteousness. So the positive projection is the antidote and the antithesis of the way of which leads to the path of death, which is path of life cannot be found in illicit sexual relationships, but the path of goodness can be found by forsaking the temptation. And now there's nothing wrong with sex itself, but it is most enjoyable and beneficial, and not the least bit offensive to Elohim, who created sex. And as the creator of sex and life itself, we reserve to him the right and the prerogative to determine its acceptable limits and boundaries and limitations. And if he says it's only to be in marriage, that means it's only to be in marriage. Anything outside of marriage or a heterosexual marriage is forbidden and sinful. For the straight shall dwell in the earth, and the perfect be left in it. So the earth will belong to the straight. That's the third time we've heard this word in this chapter. straight people are balanced. That's not straight as in heterosexual, but it's a balanced life. Those who are not prone to deviation or veering off course from the straight and narrow path, they shall dwell in the earth. They shall have life, and that abundantly, and the perfect be left in it. Now, none of us are, strictly speaking, absolutely perfect, but it's still a quality. We are commanded, in fact, to be perfect, inasmuch as our Father in heaven is perfect, in Matthew 5:48. But the wicked shall be cut off from the earth, and the treacherous ones plucked out of it. So the wicked do not enjoy length of life or quality of life. Their ways merit death and destruction and disease and everything else, and they're going to be removed from it. That means they're going to not have life and not have life after this life. The way of wicked, the lifestyle of the wickedness is no way to live at all, but we do have a better, more beneficial alternative course provided through not only in the book of Proverbs but in the Bible itself. So I hope that's the reason you're here. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. Stay tuned until next time. I'll see you then. Take care until then. Bye-bye.